Dublin's streets have long been echoed by tales of treachery, revenge, and people who left their mark on the world with blood. But among the numerous tales of power and retaliation, one individual stands out. Not because of his sins or the enemies he has made, but because of something much more amazing: his extraordinary ability to survive. Stay tuned as we uncover the remarkable tale of a man who has defied death 7 times. The one who has outwitted fate itself. The person referred to in Dublin's underworld as Mickey 9 Lives. In the early 2000s, Dublin was a city where a calm street might suddenly turn into a battlefield. The criminal scene was changing, with new conflicts emerging in the shadowy areas of the city and partnerships breaking up. Violence was not merely a possibility, it was an inevitability. Lives were being lost and names were being erased from existence. At the center of this turmoil stood a man well versed in the dangerous game: Michael Frazer. His name was murmured in pubs, dreaded in shadowy alleys, and recognized by both criminals and the Gardaí. He wasn't a kingpin, but he represented a distinct kind of threat: a loyalist, an enforcer, a man willing to fight and kill for people he believed to be his pals. Frazer has significant ties to the criminal underworld in Dublin. He began his career as a teenage foot soldier in Brian Rattigan's gang, which was notorious for its violent clashes with rivals in the Crumlin Drimnagh region. However, in the world of gangs, loyalty is often fleeting. As power moves like grains of sand, people who used to stand shoulder to shoulder could quickly become bitter foes. Frazer decided to join Fat Freddie Thompson and quit Rattigan's side at a pivotal moment. Because the fight between Rattigan and Thompson was so personal and went beyond simple territorial disputes or financial gain, this decision had considerably more ramifications than Rattigan had expected. Changing allegiances meant one thing in a vicious feud where the animosities never went away. Frazer had become a target. Frazer was no longer only an ordinary soldier. He was now viewed as a traitor by one faction and a valued comrade by another. The dangerous world of Dublin's gangs is one where betrayal often leads to violence. The initial attempt on his life was just the beginning of a perilous journey filled with near-fatal experiences. It was clear from each assassination plot that someone was determined to get rid of him for good. However, Dublin's underworld had come to understand one crucial fact about Michael Frazer. He was a challenging man to kill. The pursuit of Mickey 9 Lives has been unrelenting. He has been ambushed by assassins in the shadows. He has been torn by bullets. But he has often come out of it unharmed. There is no logical explanation for his survival or reason for his continued existence. A man like him, so deeply involved in a ruthless conflict devoid of compassion, should have met his demise long ago. And yet, here he remains, observing, anticipating, always evading the clutches of death. The first notable incident occurred on March 26, 2014, in a secluded parking lot near the Church of the Transfiguration in Clondalkin. It was clearly a planned attack. Someone had anticipated his presence. The assailant lay in wait, concealed in the shadows. As soon as Frazer exited his vehicle, gunfire erupted. He collapsed to the ground, his clothes drenched in blood. Despite being shot twice, he was determined to fight back. Instead of seeking assistance, Frazer did what few would dare. He pulled himself back into his car and drove off. Not to a hospital or a friend's house, but directly to the Clondalkin Garda station, his hands stained with blood on the steering wheel. However, when the officers rushed to his aid, he remained tight-lipped. He offered no names, no specifics, and no willingness to cooperate. He even denied the police access to his hospital medical records. This lack of cooperation forced the authorities to conduct their own investigation to crack the case. Fortunately for them, they got a lead. The shooter who targeted Frazer was identified as James Nellie Walsh, a young member of Thompson's crew. In a bizarre twist, Walsh accidentally shot himself in the leg while trying to escape, leaving behind crucial forensic evidence. Within a few months, he was apprehended and faced charges. To circumvent a lengthy trial, he ultimately accepted a plea deal for possession of a firearm with intent to endanger life, resulting in the more serious attempted murder charge against Frazer being dismissed. Walsh was sentenced to 10 years in prison for the failed assassination attempt. 5 months later, they returned for him. This time, it was in the shadowy parking lot of a pub in Fir House, Tallaght, on August 1st, 2014. The scene was set perfectly. A masked assailant rushed in, gun drawn. It seemed like an effortless execution. Yet fate, or perhaps mere chance, had other plans. As the trigger was squeezed, the gun malfunctioned. That brief moment of uncertainty was all Frazer required. He sprinted away, disappearing into the darkness before the assailant could take another shot. CCTV footage recorded the whole incident. The masked figure retreating, the weapon in hand, a lethal instrument that had failed at the most critical moment. But once again, Frazer chose silence. No names were revealed, no comments made, no assistance offered. In May 2017, gunmen assaulted Michael Frazer's home in Drimnagh, South Dublin. Under the cover of night, a vehicle raced past Frazer's residence, and at least one assailant opened fire with a handgun, showering the property with bullets. A total of 7 shots struck the house, but fortunately, neither Frazer nor anyone else was injured. All evidence pointed to Fat Freddie Thompson, an old friend turned adversary of Frazer. Subsequent reports indicated that Thompson, who had recently been released from a 20-month prison sentence for violent disorder, was personally involved in this act of revenge. There were whispers of an unresolved personal conflict between Thompson and Frazer that had lingered for years. Moreover, Thompson's situation had changed. He was now closely associated with the Kinahan cartel's efforts against the Hutch family and had access to numerous willing gunmen. It appears Thompson utilized these resources to target Frazer. The true question extends far beyond his simple survival. It explores the factors that led to his original death sentence. What traits did this man have that made him a target for persistent assassins? More importantly, how many lives does he have remaining? Michael Frazer's life had been under constant threat, but a significant breakthrough finally emerged. The arrest and conviction of Stephen Dunn and Gary Gleeson in August 2017 marked more than just another incident in gang-related crime. It established the first concrete connection between Frazer and the shadowy forces that had been pursuing him for years. In Dublin's criminal underbelly, silence was paramount. However, when Gardaí discovered a covert recording from an interception on the N3 road, the truth began to surface. For the first time, it became evident that these attacks were not random acts of violence. Frazer was not merely another target on a hit list, he was the primary target. A powerful individual wanted him eliminated, someone willing to finance professional assassins, supply weapons, and ensure that every shot was lethal. The trial of Stephen Dunn and Gary Gleeson has unveiled disturbing revelations about a planned execution amid Dublin's Gangland conflict, prosecutors stated. The men were on their way to execute a hit on Michael Frazer when Gardaí stepped in. Investigators suspected that this murder-for-hire scheme was orchestrated by high-ranking criminal figures who remain at large. In the courtroom, the prosecution unveiled their most incriminating evidence, a secret recording made inside the hitman's vehicle. The haunting phrase that sealed their doom was clear: aim for the head, headshots, or we don't get paid. The case against Dunn and Gleeson was undeniably strong. They had been apprehended with a loaded gun, gloves, and a meticulously crafted execution plan. Their defense was a feeble claim that they were just driving around, a rationale that crumbled under examination. The judge wasted no time in delivering a verdict. Both men received prison sentences, representing a rare triumph for law enforcement in a city where murderers frequently evaded justice. But even with this legal triumph, there was still a crucial question: who had planned the hit? Speculation grew very intense behind the scenes. Frazer's opponents, according to the Gardaí, were some of Dublin's most powerful crime lords, not just small-time offenders. Then there was the most significant theory of all. Had Frazer inadvertently crossed paths with the Kinahan cartel? The Kinahan cartel, notorious for their brutality, is one of Europe's most feared crime organizations. Their influence extended far beyond Ireland, encompassing drug trafficking, money laundering, and contract killings. Whispers suggested that Frazer had either unknowingly or deliberately encroached on their territory. If this were true, it would clarify the relentless assaults against him. Unlike smaller gangs, the Kinahans did not issue warnings. When they targeted someone, they pursued their objective until it was achieved. By the time Dunn and Gleeson were imprisoned, Frazer had survived 6 assassination attempts. 6 times he had narrowly escaped death, but the 7th attempt would prove to be the most perilous of all. The year was 2019, and Dublin's streets were eerily silent. Then, in the stillness of the night, a hit squad was sent out once again. This time, there would be no room for mistakes. The assassins had a single directive: complete the mission. Michael Frazer had escaped death 6 times by this time. It took a combination of street smarts, timing, and instincts honed by years of negotiating the perilous terrain of Dublin's gang wars to survive that many assassination attempts. It was not just luck. The 7th attempt unfolded on a tranquil evening in Dublin. Frazer had grown increasingly vigilant. He switched vehicles often, seldom lingered in one location, and always surveyed his surroundings before moving. Yet this time, his adversaries had adapted to their past failures. 2 gunmen, 2 firearms, no margin for error. As Frazer exited his car, the assailants appeared. The first bullet hit him in the side, the second skimmed his shoulder, and a third shattered the glass behind him. Most men would have crumpled at that moment, but not Frazer. He took off running. Despite the blood flowing from his wounds, he pressed on. He understood the stakes. If you go down, they complete the job. With every bit of determination, he vanished into the darkness. By the time the Gardaí arrived, all that remained were shell casings and blood on the ground. The shooters had failed, and once again, Michael Frazer had narrowly escaped death. At this juncture, the media had dubbed him Mickey 9 Lives. This was more than just a moniker. It was a brand. And with that brand came repercussions. Some viewed him as invincible, while others considered him a target still in play. However, after the 7th assassination attempt, a shift occurred. The streets fell silent. The chatter of another hit dwindled. Then rumors began to circulate that Frazer had settled matters. After surviving multiple assassination attempts in 2017, Michael Frazer chose to keep a low profile. Incredibly, in the years that followed, he outlived many of the dangerous figures from the underworld who once threatened him. One of these was Fat Freddie Thompson, who had been a key player in the plots against Frazer. However, Thompson's downfall came not at Frazer's hands, but due to his involvement in a different conflict. In August 2018, he was convicted of murder for his part in the death of David Douglas, a member of the Hutch gang, and received a life sentence. With Thompson imprisoned for life, Frazer was rid of one of his most vengeful adversaries. Additionally, the Kinahan cartel, another significant threat, also suffered major blows during this period. Although the cartel's leaders, including Daniel Kinahan, remained elusive overseas, their operations in Dublin were heavily impacted by police interventions and the ongoing Hutch feud, leading to the capture of several key hitmen and lieutenants. James Nellie Walsh, the hitman responsible for shooting Frazer in March 2014, spent a significant portion of the decade incarcerated due to that failed assignment. He was released around 2022, but quickly found himself in trouble once more. In a twist of fate, Walsh became the target of assassination attempts from rival criminals and narrowly escaped a machine gun attack shortly after his release from prison. Paul Rice, the seasoned gangster who had previously opposed Frazer, also faded into obscurity. Although less documented, by the late 2000s and into the 2010s, Rice was an aging figure facing health challenges and stepping back from active gang life. He no longer seemed to pose a threat to Frazer. By around 2019, Mickey 9 Lives found himself in an unexpected position. He had survived the chaos. As of 2025, Michael is thought to be alive, now in his mid to late 40s, and still leading the quiet life he embraced in recent years. Publicly, he remains a mysterious figure. Those who know the Dublin gang scene suggest that Frazer has aged out of the game. After decades in the underworld and numerous close calls with death, he seems satisfied to remain out of the limelight. And that will be all for today's video. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications for more criminal gang stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.